And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of RBLR Sports, specifically the Rowdies section of the podcast. My name is Leo Santos. I have not been here the past 2 episodes, I believe, just because of some scheduling issues, but I'm happy to be back. And as always, I'm joined alongside by my amazing co-host, James. James, how you doing today, man?
You know, I'm doing really well. We've got a little bit more preseason to talk about, not too much because we can't see it, and that's fair enough. But we also have an awesome interview to go through, and that's got me doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good. Like I said, I feel bad for missing out the last 2 episodes, but now that I'm back, it feels good to finally be back on the podcast. But yeah, like I said, we had a preseason game to talk about. Not too much to talk about because, like you said, we couldn't really see it or anything like that. In regards, it's not our fault on our end. Could be up to whatever OC and whatever the Rowdies had in mind. But to get into that preseason game, it was a 3-1 loss against Orlando City. I believe there were 2 different lineups, or at least lineup changes in both halves. One thing I can say is that we started out the game with Arrows Arena in goal, and our defense, we played 3-4-3. We usually see a 3-5-2, but this time I think Neil was experimenting with a different formation. And we've seen Scarlett, Antley, Turridge in the back 3. We've seen Dalgard, Hilton at 2, Fernandez in that midfield 4. Then we've seen Greg, Saba, and LaCava in the 3 forwards. And that was the lineup in the first half. What did you make of the lineup when you first seen it, James?
So, this lineup is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. One, I would like to point out that Jordan Scarlett has kept his position. Connor Antley is holding on as the middle center back, which was the Forrest Lasso role. So, maybe we see that. And this trialist, Brandon Turweg, he's somebody that we talked about a little bit last week. He has maintained his starting role in a trialist position, it should be said. Raiko Rosarena getting the start from the get-go, that's very good in my opinion, because I think that maybe it shows that they've narrowed that down. Of course, there are a couple more preseason games to go. If we can see how Antley turns out in this center back role, which again, for listeners, is what the Rowdies originally signed him to do, that would probably be good for us filling in that role, which is a giant hole for Forrest Lasso. And this Brandon Turweg as the other center back, him being, a continued trialist, he has at least been kept from last week. They didn't tell him that they didn't need him at this point. So maybe he can add to that much needed depth. And we did get the first goal. The Rowdies got the first goal of the game in the 20th minute, a pass from Seba to Jake LaCava. Jake LaCava is the one who put it away. So I believe that is 2 preseason goals in 2 games. That's nothing to read into in terms of how it's going to turn out for the rest of the season. But, maybe it does at least put him in a confident note going into it. What did you think about that? And then the second half once we get there?
It's always good to see your new signing, get the goals of preseason. Like you said, it's only preseason. Just really it's a time to test formations, tactics, see how it goes. But whenever you get new signings scoring goals, no harm comes in that. Just give them confidence in your season, allows them to, really feel more at home within the Rowdies team, really feel like, he's been with the team since 1 or 2 seasons ago. So it's really good that our new signing is scoring goals. And as you alluded to, in the second half, we did have a lineup change. Torek stayed in the back line, but we've seen Mel and Tate Johnson come in the back 3, replacing Connor Antley and Jordan Scarlett. And in the midfield, we've seen Dayon Harris come in, Jan Akra, and Arman came in, and Tejada also came in. I believe Lewis Hilton stayed on the field. And then up top, we had Duba and Mkosana up there. So, there was a bit changes. I think you usually see that in preseason, more than 1, 2, or 3 changes comes in there in the game. Like I said, it's a time to experiment players and positions, different positions, experiment tactics. But I think it just shows how we could feel like for changes in regards to new signings, our trial list, and also players in the local academy here in the Tampa Bay United clubs.
Yeah, I am very interested in, all of those things. So Turweg, as you said, he stays on and he gets a continued run out there. I would love to see him ultimately make it and provide the depth that we need at center back, because we only have a couple of players who are fit to fill in those roles, including the guys who were there last year. But If we build up a stable, then we don't have to worry about injuries, and that's something that you have to deal with when it's a full season and not one cut due to COVID. The other thing about the back line in this, well, not necessarily just the whole second half, but after the lineup change in the 61st minute, Tate Johnson is a player that you had mentioned from TBU, the local academy team, and it's something to be said that it would be very cool for the Rowdies to have an academy kid on the team for the upcoming year. They wouldn't be the only club to have done that at the USL Championship level. Jose Gallegos, who I highlighted a couple weeks ago for having moved from the USL Championship to the Danish top flight, he started out of the academy at San Antonio before he became a regular there. There have been a couple of other players, Josh Penn at Indy 11, who then moved on to MLS. But I do also want to let everybody know that it's very hard to do that. I remember a couple years ago, and I don't exactly remember what the reason was that I was at these 2 preseason games, but I did happen to attend 2 preseason games before we were doing RBLR sports. And the academy players out there, I remember that there were 2. I got to see them, and I heard Neil Collins yelling their name because there was no crowd for me to block that out. And then luckily, both of them were announced as when they signed for their college. They had the college announcement day, and I got to see who the players were. So Robbie Surenaeus and Jack Casey were 2 players. Robbie Surenaeus went on to play for UNF, and then this past year, I guess I was able to follow up with the college soccer, transfer news, and he has moved to UCF. So that's a good school in soccer.
It's a really good school, yeah.
I will let the listeners know UNF, though, is not the most highly rated school for soccer players. So hopefully the fact that he's moved to UCF means something good for his future. I will say for Jack Casey, he originally signed on with Dartmouth when he graduated high school. And unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, he is not still playing college soccer, and he is certainly not with the Dartmouth team. So that's what I just want to say about the level of play between the academy and then the USL Championship level. Yeah. So this trialist, Brandon Turweg, just really quickly, Turweg, he played for Southern Methodist University. They're one of the best college programs for, actually producing professional soccer players on the men's side. And he, has to go and get this extended trial to see if he is good enough to make the team. And then you take into consideration the depth between the academy and the college, and then the college and the USL Championship. I would love to see it, but I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of the distance that the players have to cover to get up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I was going to mention how you're talking about Robbie Sornelis. UCF is not a bad school at all. They produce talent that has, got talent that eventually went on to get drafted to the Major League Soccer. So it's a really good move for him. And, speaking of college soccer teams, we have another preseason game this Wednesday, James. It's this Wednesday night against the University of South Florida, and it will be played at Corbett Stadium, which is where the USF men's and women's team play their games. What are you looking forward to this game, James?
Again, I will not be able to attend this one, so I will be yet again just looking at the lineups afterwards, and that's okay for me. I don't mind looking at the lineups. I think we can still get a couple little details here and there, like how Rosarena started and played for this whole game. But yeah, what about you? Are you looking to see anything in particular?
Yeah, I was hoping to see, if because this game, obviously we played a college team already, but this is another time we'll be playing another college team for the preseason. I'm hoping Neo sometimes, he can experiment with maybe a back 4, see how he looks like. I remember seeing on Twitter, someone who follows the Rowdies put up a lineup with, I believe it was a 4-3-3, and the back line looked really good. So I'm just hoping, maybe Neo can experiment with the back 4. It seems very unlikely because, we've had plenty of preseason games already, and Neo has stayed with his back 3, so I already see that happening. But hopefully, maybe we don't know. But really, that's it. I'm, just like you, I don't know if I'll be able to attend, but I'll be looking at the lineups, and like you said, from that we could get a general idea of where Neo sees his team moving, to get the season started. But we do have some transfer news. It's not for the Rowdies gaining a player; it's for the Rowdies loaning a player. Jordan Adebayo-Smith has been sent out on loan to New York Red Bulls too, which is kind of funny because last season his 2 goals that he scored in the USL have come against the New York Red Bulls too. And honestly, James, I was kind of surprised by this move. I thought, this was going to be the year where Adebayo Smith takes that leap to, maybe fight for that starting spot. But, at the end of the day, the kid still has to develop his game a little bit more. I mean, you talked about that plenty of times last season in some episodes after some games. But like I said, I was really hoping he could be that number 3 striker just behind Guenzati and Dos Santos. But we did, make a signing in that striker position. We still have Juan Tejada, who, he's fit for preseason. I'm guessing he's going to be fit for when the season starts. So I just might, push him down the pecking order just a little bit. But, in regards to what this means for the team, I think it just shows how we have the depth and the competitiveness with the team we have now. So, and that allows Adebayo Smith to gain more experience in regards to game time, playing more minutes in the USL with New York Red Bulls too. And, he's playing around a team with also that are about his age or even younger. So, I'm pretty sure he's going to make the most out of his chance. He has a point to prove. If he can deliver to New York Red Bulls too and whatever their standards are, I think Neil Collins would be happy with that. And, I just hope the best for Adebayo Smith to continue improving his game. And hopefully, again, he could be a future striker for the Rowdies.
Yeah, I think everything you said pretty much sums it up and hits the nail on the head for me too. So we will lead now into the final episode in our history series. It is another interview. This is with the old Rowdy Perry Vanderbik. And I say that he was not just a player. We're going to get into that. But, we had Ed Austin on last week, another player. So we figured we'd give you at least one more. And, we will lead into that now. And now we are here for our interview. This is going to be the last in our history series. And I'm going to say last but not least because we have someone on who's very special with us. It is Perry Vanderbik today. Perry, how are you doing?
Hey, guys. How are you? Thanks for the call.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. Anyone who doesn't know the name Perry Vanderbik, he is quite big in the Tampa soccer team and specifically with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. You played with the old Rowdies, and in addition, you have had a role with the recent team a couple years in the past. Am I right about that?
Yes. I signed with the Rowdies back in 1978, back in the North American Soccer League. And then there was another, I guess, era of the Rowdies that was after the NASL had folded in 1984. There was a league called the APSL, the American Professional Soccer League. So I played, obviously, a couple of years in that league. And then also they had the AISA, which is the American Indoor Soccer Association. I know for sure they played one season in that. And then there was a little bit of a hiatus. And then the Rowdies came back again in, actually I signed with them in 2008. And they brought back the NASL. And I was with them up until 2016. So that's kind of the history there of
all right, so
from back starting in 1978.
Yeah, obviously a very extensive history and something that we're going to get into in pretty good detail here. So before we move into your playing career, if you could just help us out in terms of providing the listeners with a good primer on your background, where you come from, what is your background in the game of soccer, and how did you get to be the player who was actually signed into the NASL?
Okay, I started, obviously I grew up playing, youth soccer in St. Louis. And, I played for, back in the day, I played for my grade school team. And then, back in the, early 70s, you had club soccer, just started, and I played for a club back then, which is now Scott Gallagher, which is probably one of the top 15 clubs in the country. A very, very, successful club. Yep. And what was obviously very good for my development is I had, at that time, in high school, when I was playing for my club team, I had professional players. There was a team there called the St. Louis Stars, which was part of the North American Soccer League. They later became the California Surf, but there was 2 or 3 players that were playing for the Stars, and there were some former college players that formed this club team. So I was getting high-level coaching, during my high school years. Played for a very successful high school. It was called St. Thomas Aquinas. I know there's one in Fort Lauderdale, but this one was in St. Louis. And again, like I said, it was successful, meaning that, we're always a contender. We won 2 state championships in my 4 years. But, growing up in that era, St. Louis was very, very competitive. So, you pretty much played in your age group. Maybe sometimes you played up maybe a year, but not up a couple of years, as everybody thought I did. And then obviously we had a team in the North American Soccer League in St. Louis called the St. Louis Stars, and it was pretty much made up of a lot of St. Louis players. And having those players as my coaches, I attended a lot of their games. And again, as I always tell youth players that I'm coaching now, that I continue to coach, is that you have to become a student of the game. And that's something that I very much was. I mean, I've always, if I wasn't practicing or watching a game, I was always at a game, just, obviously talking to coaches and players and just, being around the environment. So I very much became a student of the game. As I mentioned, I played for my grade school team, and then I got an opportunity to play for, it was another team in another league. Again, it was called the Corey League. And one of the players on the team, his father happened to be Bob Gelker, who coached St. Louis University and SIU. And his son, Tim Gelker, and I became very good friends. So that obviously helped out a lot with my development. Because when I was in high school, sometimes you get days off, and I spent my days off over at SIU training with some of the college players, or at least watching them and trying to get in as much as I can. So it all came full circle when the United States youth, obviously, programs were reaching out, and I got invited to play in a youth tournament in Monaco, France in 1977. Prior to that, 1976, I was on a trip with the U.S. youth team over in Germany. So this was maybe 7 or 8 months later that I was invited to go play in this tournament. It's very, very difficult for me because at the time, under the United Missouri high school rules, you can only play for one team. So as we played on our season, got towards the playoffs and the state finals, I had to make a choice whether I was going to play for my country or for my high school team. And obviously I chose to play for my country. And yeah, so again, we have a lot of time to talk about that. But when I did that, we played an international tournament. It was in France, in Monaco. And it was an 8-nation tournament, and it was phenomenal. I mean, there was a lot of experimental rules that were going on at the time. So that in 1977, but at that time, the NASL had sent some scouts to that tournament to watch for the younger players. And it was at that time that there was a gentleman by the name of Francisco Marcos, who had a lot to do with, the beginning of the Rowdies, the name, the players, the marketing and all that stuff. He was on a trip as sort of a technical director for the younger players. And it was then that obviously he saw myself and another player named Sanjay Vanderbik, who the Rowdies drafted out of high school also. And, that's how we got recognized by the club. And, when I came back, there was opportunities, I think, with New York, Minnesota, and even with the St. Louis Stars, my hometown team, and the Tampa Bay Rowdies. So it was just a sit and wait. I told them that I was interested in if I did get drafted, because again, I'm sure they didn't want to waste a draft pick. If the player just says, full out, I'm not going to, accept it. So, back then I did the interview by phone, and I'd met Francisco when I was in Monaco, so I kind of knew who he was and kind of what was going on. But they had Ray Klavecka from the Cosmos, Peter Short from Minnesota, and again, John Sewell was the head coach of the St. Louis Stars. And, those are my choices other than St. Louis University, SIU. So there's a couple of colleges that I was very, very interested in going to. I hadn't made up my mind, but, that was that was the position I was in right when I graduated. So I know there's a long answer, but I'm just kind of telling you how that all came about. So it was in January that they had the draft. And at that time, I got drafted by the Rowdies, and they contacted my high school, and I was in class, and they pulled me out of class, and I had to go home, and there was a little press conference. And, the fact that I got drafted was one thing, but now I was got to go down and, be part of the team. Under the NASL rules at the time, you couldn't join your team until you graduated or your class graduated. So I had to wait till the end of May, and I ended up signing my first contract June 1st, 1978.
Wow. that is quite the story. I appreciate all of the details that you give there. Please don't worry about the length of the answers. I think that is something that I value personally quite a lot. So I imagine that we have listeners who will also appreciate that. But I've got a few questions about your playing career, and then the time that you have had on the admin side, and afterwards I will hand it over to Leo to talk about what's going on with the team nowadays and the rest of the soccer landscape here. But if you could, we're up to the point now where you've signed with the Rowdies. Give me some information about the time that you spent as a player with the Rowdies. And, we will also, if you can, go into your stint with Team America, because that is something that we have covered on the history episode so far.
Okay, so again, when I first signed for the Rowdies, I still wanted to play in the Olympics. Back in the North American Soccer League, as you know, there was a lot of very, very good players, a lot of European players. And the North American Soccer League rule at the time was you had to have 2 North Americans on the field at all times. The reason it was North Americans because there was teams in Canada. You had Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver. So obviously some very good teams and players. So there was probably, when I signed in 78, maybe 5, 6 of us that were Americans and Canadians at the same time, but we had to have 2 on the field at all times. So, the playing chances, the rest were all, obviously Europeans, South Americans, and things like that. So, it wasn't like you're going to jump right into the starting lineup coming out of high school, especially with that level. So the opportunity to, play with the U.S. team, I still had to stay as an amateur. So when I first signed my contract, it was an amateur contract. And back then, being an amateur player, you're only allowed to make $50 a week to play professional soccer. But the way they were able to kind of get around that is, obviously, I got an apartment, I was able to get a car, and they had other titles for me that, like say director of Camp Kick in the Grass, or some kind of role at Camp Kick in the Grass, and some kind of role, I forget the other one was, that they were able to pay me a little bit more money, obviously to get me to sign. So I wanted to keep my amateur status so I could still continue to play for the United States Olympic team, the Pan Am team. And that for me was, obviously, part of my development. So I was very eager for that. To take place and continue, that path in my career. Unfortunately, we qualified for the Olympics in 1980, but because of the boycott with Mr. Carter, the president, we didn't get to participate. But again, I would have been captain of that team, and look back at, it's 42 years ago, and it's it's still. It's still very difficult because, again, you never know with injuries and things like that you ever get to participate in the Olympics again. So after that finished, obviously, then I jumped on board and obviously signed a professional contract. And then obviously I played with the team from 78 to 84. But there was one season, as you mentioned, Team America. And this was when the United States Soccer Federation was trying to convince FIFA that if you give us the World Cup here in 1986, that we will have a team that's in training and will be prepared to, obviously compete. Now, once the World Cup is awarded to a country, that host country does not have to qualify. But that's where we're trying to convince FIFA, and we were still in the running that, we can make this work and we'll have a team. So they took, some of the best players on the North American Soccer League teams, the American players, and put them all on one team. There was some that couldn't make it. Like Ricky Davis was in New York, and part of his contract was, he did a lot of promotions, and he had to be in New York. So that obviously didn't work out for him. There was a couple other players that had some problems of getting to Team America because of their contract status. But for the most part, we had a very good team, and we participated in the 1983 North American Soccer League. Got off to a very good start, but towards the end, when we found out halfway through the season that FIFA had awarded the World Cup to Mexico, and that at the end of the season, the players that were there at Team America would all go back because we're only on loan from our clubs. And I thought it was a great idea, just kind of a little bit too early. But again, that's what, I know Europeans have done, teams have done in the past, like in Barcelona, Real Madrid, 5 or 6 other players play at Barcelona. The other 7 or 8 play together at Real Madrid. Between the two teams, that's pretty much the makeup of Spain. All right. Not that we were that advanced, but we were trying to get the players together as often as possible. But because of the budgets we had with the Federation, it made more sense to get an owner that we could put a team in DC and play out of RFK and, in preparation for the World Cup that was coming up in 3 years. But, and that's how fast, the Federation, FIFA made that decision. And then we just, the team disbanded and we went back to our clubs. So I finished my, the last part of my career here in 1984 in the NASL with the Rowdies. And then, unfortunately the league folded. And so there was, I wouldn't say probably 7, 8, 9 of our players that were in the team, in the roster, that went to play in the MISL, the Major Indoor Soccer League. So Gordon Jago was my coach, first coach in Tampa. So he was with the Dallas Sidekicks. So myself, Tattoo, Pedro DeBrito, Mark Carpin, Russ McLeod, we all joined the Dallas Sidekicks in the MISL, Major Indoor Soccer League. And back in the day, that was pretty much the fledgling league in this country. It just took off. In some of the cities, like in St. Louis, in the early 80s, was standing room only 17,000. So some of these franchises were very, very successful. I went to Dallas, and in our third year, we won the championship. After that, my contract ran out. I joined the St. Louis Steamers, which is my hometown. Unfortunately, at that time, in the mid 80s, professional soccer was struggling a little bit. So the league itself was doing okay, not great, but some of the franchises kind of get kind of weeded out. And unfortunately, St. Louis, after my first season there, my fourth season in the MISL, they folded. So I played my last 4 seasons in Wichita with the Wichita Wings, which I very much enjoyed. And, we had some really good teams there, played with some very good players. And then after that, I came back here. At the time, I never left. I always kept my house here in Tampa, so I just played seasonally there. But I played 3 seasons in Dallas, 1 in St. Louis, and 4 in Wichita. And probably the last 3 seasons in Wichita, I would always come back to Tampa, and again playing the APSL. That was the American Professional Soccer League, and it was it was seasonal. It wasn't like it was a year-round contract, but it fit because I was playing indoor in the fall and the winter and spring, and then I was just in the summertime I was playing for the Rowdies in the APSL, and I did that for 8 seasons. Then after that, obviously, it got to the point where just get a little older in my career, and it was time to make a change, and that's when I went to the executive side. So I felt very, very fortunate to go from playing straight into, working with the club. I put a lot of time and effort into, obviously, camps and clinics over the years, and, to this day, I still, enjoy developing players and coaching them. But again, it was one of those where, that decision, for players, someone to coach, and I did. And then I got into the executive side. So when I left the Rowdies, then obviously the indoor team was here. It's called the Tampa Bay Terror, and they only lasted, I think, 3 seasons. I was there for the first 2, and we played over at the Bayfront Center in St. Pete. And I was the player, assistant coach, director of camp. So I had quite a few titles there. From there, I went on to join the Tampa Bay Mutiny with MLS. I first started there in community relations. That lasted 1 season. And then I was elevated to assistant coach. Myself and Tim Hankinson was the head coach, and Frank Gallup, myself, were the assistants. And then, obviously, Tim moved on, and Alfonso Modelo came in as the head coach for 1 season. And then after that, I took over for the last 11 games, which was the final year of the Mutiny in 2000. So, unfortunately, because of 9/11, and kind of the time that MLS was at, they started with 10 teams, they went to 12, then back down to 10, and those 2 teams that left were the Miami Fusion and the Tampa Bay Mutiny. So obviously, then I took a step back and continued to coach here locally. And then I was contacted by the owners of the present Tampa Bay Rowdies. And we got together, and obviously I started working for them in 2008. Like I said, all the way to 2016. As I wore many hats there too, but it was more of a technical director / GM role.
Gotcha. Well, obviously you have possibly one of the most extensive, resumes in Tampa soccer history, as far as I'm aware. But there are so many things to go over, and I wish that we had more time. Maybe we'll have to, do this again. But to go into the history a little bit more briefly before we, return to the present day Rowdies and the team that was reformed around 2010, if you can give me maybe a couple just quick highs and lows of the period, maybe, a low being when the NASL folded or something along those lines, maybe a high. Well, I don't want to, there's no reason for me to speculate, but
sure,
anyway,
no problem.
Yeah, if you could go through that.
Sure. So, obviously I was very excited when I was playing in high school and getting the opportunity to come and play for and represent my country at the youth level. So I played in tournaments three or four tournaments. Back then would be called the U17s and U20s, but they really didn't label it then. So I was very excited about representing my country while I was in high school, and obviously getting to see the world and just preparing myself for something that I have a passion for, and hopefully that I get an opportunity, whether I went to college or not, to play professional soccer. Unbeknownst to me that I signed when I came out of high school in '78, and in 1978 and 1979, the Rowdies were Soccer Bowl finalists. And I remember obviously coming down here, and my parents being in St. Louis, and something I'll never forget is just, I continued to call them after all our home games and let them know that we won. So we were very, very dominant at home, and we did okay on the road. But again, it was very difficult for to beat Tampa in Tampa Stadium, obviously with the weather, but our fans were fantastic. And again, I just, you're averaging 30,000. Sometimes you get the 40, 50,000 when you're playing the Cosmos or the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. So the rivalries were very, very big. And again, you're going back to some of the best players in the world. For Fort Lauderdale, they had Gerd Mueller, Nenny Cabillas, Ray Hudson. They had the South American Player of the Year, Elias Figueroa, Jan Van Beveren in goal. I mean, you just look at the roster, and George Best, maybe I've said that have come through to play at that team. You look at the Cosmos with Giorgio Canali and Franz Beckenbauer and Carlos Alberto and Bogusevic, and just every one of those players. It's like, it was a who's who in the soccer world playing for the New York Cosmos. And again, you just raised the level every time you played against them. Well, I was experienced that when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And I just, it was fantastic. When I joined the league in 1978, there was 24 teams. So it was definitely on the up. And again, just obviously now instead of playing, for your high school or, just making some trips with the U.S. team, now you're playing year round. And now you're getting that experience. And it's a day in, day out with some of the best players in the world. You're learning the culture, the philosophy, and everything that, that there is to know from these big-time professionals that have come from Europe and South America into the U.S., who, by the way, they loved it here. They loved playing for the Rowdies. And again, we were very successful the first 2 years that I was here. In 1980, we lost in the semifinals to San Diego. And obviously, so we didn't make the Soccer Bowl there, but for the first 3 years of my career, we were on top, and it was fun to be around. It's exciting, and look back at my career, and those are times that you reflect on when you reflect on your career, and just like playing at the top and always striving to be the best. And again, obviously we lost in 78 and 79, but still we made it to the final. Having said that, that was the outdoor. Then we come back in the off season, which really wasn't a lot. It consisted of a couple of weeks, and now we're playing indoor soccer. So the North American Soccer League wanted to compete with the MISL, so we had an indoor team here for the Rowdies, and we played most of our games at the Bayfront Center. If there was a scheduling conflicts, we play out at Lakeland Civic Center. But at the time, and in fact, James's father would know, it didn't matter where the Rowdies went, the fans would follow them. And we just got good crowds, no matter it was sell out in the indoor, sell out in the outdoor. It was a good time to be in the North American Soccer League. So things like that, and we won a championship in '79. I think we did again in '81 or '82. So unfortunately, the league folded, in, like I said, in 1984, and that would be one of the lows because some of the players, they just. They've been here in Tampa for a while, and it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was towards the end of their careers, but, now that the outdoor league is folded, now what do we do? And, I was just, like I said, I feel fortunate that I got recruited to play for the Dallas Sidekicks. And again, it was a new franchise in the MSL, and we played at Reunion Arena, which I don't even know if that's there anymore because I'm sure they've replaced it with something, or if it is, it's not where they play anymore. But I'll say this: we used to pack that place too. And Mr. Carter, who owned the Dallas Mavericks at the time, also owned the Sidekicks. We had a very good team, and like I said, after the third year, we won the championship. So those are highs, and again, playing for good coaches, playing with very, very good players. I would say that that would go right up there of my very, very memories of playing professional soccer, and obviously in those two leagues. No disrespect to the APSL, it's just where outdoor soccer was at the time. It wasn't until FIFA awarded the United States the World Cup in 1994. They took a surplus of that money and started MLS, which needed to be started. And here we are today. At the way they're going and the way they continue to progress is I think is awesome.
Yeah, I tend to agree with everything in terms of the direction, but I think that the details that you offer, it's a very interesting glimpse into the life of a player, because obviously many people have tried, but it's a very small number of people who actually get to live that life and experience what it entails on a day-to-day basis. So I think that people on the outside of that circle, it's incredibly interesting to hear what goes into that, and I value being able to know that not only were the Rowdies a very good team, but they were a very popular team. That's also very cool. So as I said, you had your time on the playing side. You also had your time on the administrative side, both for the teams that were in the past and the current iteration. So you've obviously got some insight for what it takes to be that player, to be that admin who runs the team right now. So with that, we're going to go into how the current team looks to you, and I think that Leo had some questions lined up specifically related to that.
Yeah, yes, you're correct, James. I did. Once again, hi Perry. Thanks again for joining the show.
Hi, Leo.
Yeah, great to meet
you.
Ever since we started this, the history of the Rowdies and USL, and just the overall scene of soccer in the U.S., I've learned so much. I've been enjoying the guests James has brought on, and all the stories and facts that James has found. So it's really been interesting. But so speaking about the current Rowdies team, what are your thoughts about from when you used to play for the team and how they are now? What are your thoughts about this team, and what do you like most about this team?
Well, I like a lot of things about the new team. In fact, they've been very, very successful over the past 2 or 3 years. And then before that, when we first started, let me just go back to where we started. So, there was a situation where obviously there was some ownership interested in bringing, a professional team back to Tampa. The USL itself was actually, the home office is in Tampa. And back at that time, it was up there on Northdale Mabry. So, and I know that Francisco Marcos was at the time running the league when we first, obviously, were looking to join the league as the Rowdies, and that would have been in 2008, 2009. So the ownership group had contacted me and says, look, obviously, we want to, make this happen again, and with your strong background and previously playing for the team and coaching in the area, is there interest? And obviously very much, and obviously I joined them kind of straight away, and that was the building process. And again, it was there was a lot of things going on between professional leagues in the U.S. at the time, and not to get too much into it, but our very first year, we joined the USL, and for some reason, the ownership group kind of, obviously pulled back from that and joined the NASL. And because at that time there was, like I said, things going on with that outdoor league, so the United States Soccer Federation stepped in for our first year in 2010 and says we're going to play as U.S. Soccer Division II. That's the name of the league. And at the end of the year, and at the end of the season, whether you wanted to join the USL, the NASL, and go your separate ways, that's up to you. So for the very first season that we played, that's what we did. Is we played as USF Division II. There was 13, 14 teams in the league, and then the following year, that's when the NASL started. And I think we started with 10, 12 teams at the time. So that's where, so in 2010, 11, and in 2012, we won the championship. Actually, it was a two-legger. We played up in Minnesota. We lost 2-0 in the first leg, and we came down here and we made it 2-1, and then we made it 2-2, and they went up 3-2. We tied it 3-3, and at the end of the time, then we had a player that was sent off in extra time, and it went to PKs, and Jeff Antonello, our goalkeeper at the time, was fantastic in the PKs. We ended up winning the championship in 2012. I think it was in 2015. when the NASL was kind of getting ready to go away, and that's when in 2016 and sorry, in 2017. Sorry about these dates. That's when the USL, the Rowdies went and joined the USL, and obviously that's the league they play under now. And again, just like any other club, any other team, they have their ups and their downs. And again, they were just trying to figure some things out. But I can tell you right now, the club, the position it's in, it's definitely figured them out. Neil Collins has done a very good job with the players. Obviously, he's getting to know the landscape better than this. When I signed him as a player, he just came over here and he wanted to. And again, that's one thing with Neil. What you see is what you get. The guy wears his heart on his sleeve, and he works tirelessly. And like you tell any other player as a coach, you get out what you put into it, and he's an example of that. So Neil's done a very good job with learning the landscape, understanding it. Because you got MLS and you got USL, and then obviously there's leagues below that, and you have to pull from within. And again, all these teams, they all have budgets, and those are some of the things that you have to kind of understand and live by. And so he's done a very good job with that, and it's shown on the field. So obviously they made it to the finals in the last 2 years, and I anticipate them making it that far this year or as close. I mean, you got to get sometimes things happen with injuries and travel and suspensions and injury, so you got to have a little bit of luck. But if they continue what they've done in the last 2 years, there's no reason they shouldn't be at the top this year. So, and again, as the the league changes, the players change. At one time, was kind of a more experienced. I think they've kept the experience that they could, but they also look at some of the younger players too. As obviously, the evolution of soccer in the U.S. with our younger players, they've become more attractive for teams in Europe. And I think, I couldn't tell you offhand, but I know that there's quite a few players that have been developed through the USL that have moved onto MLS and onto European teams, but there are also some players in the USL that have also joined other teams in Europe or, in somewhere outside of the United States. And that has a lot to say for, the coaches that are involved in the league. So it's a very, very competitive league. It is. I mean, I don't know if you guys had a chance to go to the final or see the final, even the semifinal. It came down to the wire pretty much in the semifinal. And so very exciting. So I know that they've made some new signings, and I think they're better than last year. But you know what? Other teams have made some new signings too. So again, from one season to the next, you just don't know. But knowing what I do know about the landscape and the players they've got, and the experience they have, they should do well.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking about the product on the field. I want to switch over to the product off the field. We talked about the championship they won in 2012 and how in consecutive seasons they made the playoffs. They reached the USL championship this past season. But in regards to off the field, have you seen more growth within the club in regards to fans and more media attention?
Yeah, I mean it's always growing. Obviously, you always want it to grow faster than kind of what it does. But as far as the soccer community goes, they've done very, very well. Very fortunate we have some very good professional sports teams here. When you look at the Buccaneers and the Lightning and the Rays and all the success they've had, and the Rowdies have been right up there with them. So that's been fantastic. And again, it's just always a little bit difficult. I'm not saying that, you got the Buccaneers and, I don't think those season ticket holders would, or come over and watch the Rowdies and vice versa. But, it is what it is. There's only, so much of sports dollars to go around, and that's the unfortunate thing. But as far as, if anybody, I'm just trying to think, you got Orlando City, you got the Lakeland Tropics. I'm just trying to think of some of the Inter Miami. Some people drive down to that. But for the most part, the Rowdies have held their own. in the soccer landscape in the market. And, because I do continue to coach at some of these youth clubs, and, there's talk out there of, how the Rowdies are doing and what they're doing. And there's, which has been very good, is a lot of these local players at some of the bigger clubs have getting opportunities to go on trial or even be part of their squad. I'll call it that. It's not the first team. They really don't have a second team, but they're there to train, they're to make, and develop. And the Rowdies have offered that. So as long as that's out there and it will continue, I think that's, very good marketing and very good, it's a good connection for the Rowdies and the local youth clubs to have.
Yeah, you mentioned the landscape of soccer within Florida. I mean, we have 2 professional teams in MLS and 2 teams in the USL. But that's just in Florida. In regards to the national scene, do you see soccer becoming, soon a top 2 or a top 3 sports in the country? Because we do have the NFL, we do have the MLB, we do have the NBA. Do you think it's only a matter of time before soccer does reach that level to where it does become a top 2 or top 3 sport in the country?
Well, I definitely do, because again, I've been in the game for a long time, and I can remember when MLS first started, there was a campaign. It was called the 5th major sport behind, the sports that you had mentioned. Now it's my understanding, audience-wise, that we're the 3rd. We just passed up, the NHL. So again, as the league, as players continue to grow and the evolution, I call it, it's just because there's so many opportunities now for our players that it's just a matter of time before this kind of really explodes. I call it the new frontier. You look back, 25 years ago when MLS first started, 26 years ago, there was 10 teams, and then they went to 12, back to 10. And then there was a time, I don't know if you guys done a lot of history or reading about that, the MLS was, looking to close it down. In fact, there's an article out by Dan Hunt where he was working in New York, and his father, Lamar Hunt, was one of the original investors in the league, called him, told him to come back to Dallas. And he says, I was hired and fired in one day, meaning that the MLS was looking to maybe, close their doors. And wasn't for Robert Kraft and Lamar Hunt and Phil Anschutz. Between those 3 gentlemen, they kept this league together. And, look at it now. They just sold their 28-29 franchise to Charlotte for $325 million. So you look at what that's going on as far as the franchise go. You look at the academies. You look at all the, the MLS Next academy that they have, which is a national league for developing players, all the tournaments that we have. And then you look at a lot of our players that are now getting opportunities to play in Europe, and not just go over there and train. They're over there playing, and they're making a difference. And most of these players are playing at, some of the best clubs in their country, in those countries. Krista Pulisic's playing at Chelsea, and you got the keepers playing at Man City. So again, for me, it's just a matter of time with our development. And everybody wants it to happen right away. It's not going to happen right away. And I know the MLS is a different structure. It's a single entity, and there's only certain ways to bring players in, and you have to understand it. And they have general allocation money, transfer allocation money, and draft picks still. But for the most part, it's working, all right? And we'll see where it goes from there. But there also needs to be, like I said, where the Rowdies play in the USL, that other kind of competition, because for me, that's the chain. There's League One, they have League Two, League One, the Championship, and MLS. And of course, now you got, all the national team programs. You get the 15s, the 17s, the 19s, the 23s, which is the Olympic team. So it's going to continue to grow, and these players and, these teams as they go, and it's just, for me, it's just going to mushroom. And, I look back at, over the history for the last, 44 years since I've come out of high school, just the opportunities that these players get. I just spent recently 7 weeks in Cincinnati at their academy during the fall, and I was working with their U19s and U13s, and see the players at this level, right, where they're at. It's, it's amazing how they, that these professional clubs are making this kind of investment, knowing that, some may work out and some might not. But look at Dallas. I mean, they've become a selling club. I'm not saying MLS is a selling league at this time, but, it may very do so for a while. And then after that, now all of a sudden, the players actually want to start coming into the MLS. So again, I know a lot of people, they compare it to, the EPL or, Serie A or the French league and just saying, we're not there yet. We know that. Okay. But I think we're in a good spot and we're going to continue to grow. It just takes time. And through that, the evolution of the players, obviously, they're going to be very, very respected. I mean, back when I played for the United States national team, the respect in CONCACAF, it was so-so. But now, I mean, here we are, we're dominating. And let me just take a city like Cincinnati. They started professional soccer 6 years ago. They started in the USL. And, out of the gate, they never had professional soccer. Well, they did in '79 with the Cincinnati Kids in the MLSL, but it lasted 2 years. But after that, to get to the USL level, their first year they did like $1 million in merchandise. They had 14,000 their first game. So who would have thought 6 years later that the city of Cincinnati would be hosting the two giants in CONCACAF, the United States and Mexico, at a $325 million, soccer-specific, privately funded stadium. Who would have thought that? But those are the investments that the owners are making to bring soccer into this country. And again, I just read where I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but where Serie A is looking to maybe host a tournament in the United States during the World Cup. So other countries have seen the success that we're having, and again, just trying to be part of this, and the players that are coming in and things like that. I think there's a huge upside here. And the other thing that's on the table right now is the television contract, the media rights, and things like that for MLS. It's being negotiated. So whether that's a game changer this year or this time around, we'll see. Here's an opportunity for this is huge for MLS and for the United States national team, and for all this, this be fantastic exposure, and that's really what we need. So I think that's an important step, and that's hopefully will happen within the next year or two. The other thing is, I don't know if you gentlemen are aware that in 2023, MLS has an agreement with Liga MX, obviously the first division in Mexico, to stop the league in 2023 for 1 month and play a tournament between the teams in Mexico, their first division, and obviously our MLS teams. And I think for the market in this country and in Mexico is huge for games like that. So that's the direction that it's trying to head in. And then after this year, after the finals in Qatar, then, obviously with, the World Cup coming to Mexico, Canada, and the United States, you can only look at the positives and, let's see where we're at after 2026. So a lot of good things are happening for the game.
Yeah, I just have one more question for you, Perry. Then if James has any more questions, he can ask you. But right now, I just want to talk more about you. Are there any current projects or anything you're doing is keeping you busy, or anything you'd like to promote on here? And how can people follow you today in regards to social media?
I'm not really on social media, but it's one of those where you're not on
TikTok or anything?
No, I'm not on TikTok or anything like that. I like it. But anyway, I'm director of coaching at a small club here in Oldsmar. And then obviously, I help out at a few other clubs. I'm really into, training the players, the coaches, and developing the players. I still have a huge passion for that, and that's something I work at. I do also own and operate Camp Kick in the Grass, which, started back in 1975 with the original Rowdies. So every summer I try to, do some camps and clinics at the local clubs. A lot of these players, when they're 14, 15 years old, they take off to these college campuses and, go to residential camps where, I just want to try to keep, out into the grassroots at the local clubs and, just try to, develop some of the players during the summertime and during the holidays when they got some time off and stuff like that. So that's what I've been doing. I'm opening a couple other projects. I do a little bit of consulting for MLS, but, again, still involved in the game as much as I can be, and in fact, and always will be. In fact, some of the MLS teams were here in town just recently, for preseason. You had Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Nashville. I'm trying to think. There was one more team. I think Charlotte was down at IMG. So it's always been a kind of a place to be. during preseason here for MLS, and the fact that some of the local clubs, they have some players that have been trained with some of these teams, some more than others, but it's all about opportunity. And that's what I try to, tell the players, all the time when I'm coaching them. You got to become a student of the game, and, obviously it's about opportunity, so just be prepared. It's all about preparation. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
That sounds awesome. I feel like, I think it's important that we realize that there's people out here trying to develop these new, players in regards to, playing soccer and stuff like that. I feel like it's really important to develop soccer players because one day, who knows, they could play for a national team. As we're saying now, a bunch of 20, 21, 22-year-olds wearing the national team jersey and doing a great job playing for the U.S. men's national team. But yeah, once again, thank you again, Perry, and I'll turn it over to James.
Yeah, no problem. So again, Leo, real quick, how some of this works is, I don't know, I'm sure you guys read up on this quite a bit, but one of the former Rowdies, Tommy Heineman, has just been named the head coach for the U.S. men's national U15 team. So again, it's always good to see players that I've signed or have worked with in the past to get these opportunities. And again, you go back to, when I first started playing, the coaches that I was around, parents at the beginning, didn't know a lot about the game. But I was, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I was very fortunate to have coaches that played at a high level. That played for the 72 Olympic team, that played for the St. Louis Stars and the North American Soccer League, coached me at a young age. And that's why I'm always encouraging, the former players that, have played at a high level, all right? And don't have to be a high level, just at a good level to put back into the game. And that's where I think, both on the boys and the girls side, that would be very helpful with our development.
Yeah, I think that's all, very important. Definitely, as you said, don't just step away, but keep yourself involved, not only for whatever benefit you might get out of it, but because you can offer something to someone somewhere down the line. But I just have one more question for you, Perry. It'll be a quick one. I don't know how much interaction you've had with Neil Collins, but just to wrap up our conversation here over everything, and it's been very enlightening. But with your insight as a former player and an admin, have you seen anything from Neil Collins that you would like to, to share with our listeners that you can see about him that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, ever since Neil came to this club, we were on a preseason trip over in Nottingham, and I had already spoke to Neil's agent, and we met over there. And once he put pen to paper, he's one of the hardest working, well, as a player and now as a coach that I know. And again, you look what the success he's had out of it. His first year, obviously when he took over, a little bit tough because, obviously you got the players that were left, and obviously he took over as the head coach, but, he came in, he worked hard, and he knew he didn't know the league right away, but the time that he's been here, he's really knows the league and knows the players. And that's important. You can become a very, very good coach, but also you got to have the players too. It's a balance. All right. And again, I think he's done very well at balancing those, those two things there. He comes in here and again, I'll say this, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and, again, what I tell players is that, I wouldn't say something if I didn't care. All right. So, when you're dealing with coaches, think sometimes they'll say something that you want to hear. And a lot of times they say something you don't want to hear, but they don't say anything. Oh, that's when you should be worried. And, when I see Neil on the field as a player, I'll never forget talking to him. He was, lining up for a corner kick one time, and he just, between him and this player that was marking him, they really got into it. And I'm like, I thought Neil was going to take the guy's head off. You got to be careful there. He goes, no, I don't. I says, okay. So he just, that's the way he played. And obviously you can see the way he coaches. So that's where I think it's been a difference, kind of in the last couple of years, that he's brought a team that is very well respected around the league. All right. And again, there's been success there. And, players want to play for a successful team. They, that just kind of, it just breeds, and, it just gives you the confidence. So teams come in here, they look at the, playing in St. Petersburg, you're playing right there on the water, probably one of the best stadiums in the league. And you've got, a fantastic fan base, again, one of the best in the leagues. And so it's probably not hard to, sell players to come in here. But again, when the players come here, they know that, look, you know what, there's a history here. And now you've got to be, if you want to be part of that, you got to live up to it. And that's the culture that he's built. And again, doing it 2 years in a row, that's huge. Okay. You can sometimes, make it to the semifinals, but he made it to the finals 2 years in a row. And I know that's their goal this year. And again, barring injuries and anything, catastrophic, they should be right up there again this year too. So I've got all the faith in Neil that, obviously he's got the team and his staff in the right direction.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, Perry, for your time. Really great interview. James, thank you again for setting that up. This whole history of the NASL and the Rowdies has been really fun to hear, and great to to hear you talk about that. So, I do think our interview is, but I mainly thank you, James, for setting all this up.
I am only happy to do it. As I said in the last couple of ones, this is obviously something that we were putting on for listeners, but as much as we are, it is just as much for me. I've been having an awesome time learning from all these folks. But that is going to cover the interview. To move on to the next bit here, we just want to say from RBLR, liking and subscribing to the podcast is free, and we obviously appreciate when you do that. It helps us a lot. But one thing that you could do, if you feel so inclined, if you think that you might need some new clothes coming up anytime soon, maybe you've got some sporting events to attend, maybe you've got a hot date that you want to show off your new threads to, you can support our podcast as well by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs that we have got going on there. I know our producer Eureka has had some really cool stuff cooked up, and I'm really excited for what else we've got coming out down the line. I'm sure that there is no end to the creativity that is going into that, but there will be a link in the description and the promo code COYR for 10% off. So please do check that out. And this will conclude our off-season history series. We are going to move next week into the preseason, and we're going to be talking about all of the new signings that the Rowdies made to lead into the season upcoming. So please give us any feedback you have had for the history series. If you liked it, that would be great. If you hated it, you can let us know that too, because it is good for us to be aware of where people are feeling. I honestly doubt that people hated it, because it was a lot of very cool information, but I can be wrong, and I will definitely take that into note if that is the case. So just give us some information all along the way, and like I said, next week we'll be talking about the new signings, and Leo and I get to play the game of trying to create our own lineup. I'm excited to do that as well, because everybody loves making their own lineup and yelling at the coach virtually, at least, if they don't get their wishes. So that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can follow us at RBLR Sports. You can also follow me at RBLR James K. Leo, close us out. Where do they follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at I'm Leo Santos _. And if you have any questions, if you want to interact with us, or not just for the Rowdy section, but for the Rays, the Lightning, the Bucks, just use the hashtag #RBLR, and we'll be sure to answer your questions. But with all that being said, listeners, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We're available on the Spotify, iHeartRadio app, on Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and all other major podcast platforms. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And once again, thank you for your time. Thanks for listening and hanging out with us. And as always, come on, you Rowdies.
Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.